What happens when split-second instincts clash with royal protocol? When a decorated guard's lightning reflexes reveal a deadly conspiracy lurking within the very heart of the British royal family. Sometimes the difference between life and death comes down to a single moment of courage and the willingness to defy everything you've been trained to respect. The morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured gardens of Clarence House as Detective Sergeant Marcus Webb adjusted his earpiece for the third time in 10 minutes. 23 years of military service, followed by 8 years protecting the royal family, had taught him to trust his instincts above all else. Today, those instincts were screaming. All stations, this is control. Royal schedule confirms Prince George's arrival at 1400 hours for tea with Her Majesty Queen Camilla, crackled the voice through his earpiece. Webb's weathered fingers drummed against his thigh as he surveyed the elegant drawing room where the afternoon's gathering would take place. The 38-year-old protection officer had served in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Northern Ireland before joining the Royalty Protection Unit. He'd seen enough violence to last several lifetimes, but nothing had prepared him for the delicate dance of palace politics. Today felt different, though. The air seemed charged with an electricity he couldn't quite explain. Queen Camilla swept into the room at precisely 1:30, her silver hair perfectly styled, wearing a navy blue dress that spoke of understated elegance. She moved with the practiced grace of someone who had spent decades in the public eye, every gesture calculated and refined. Her lady-in-waiting, Mrs. Patricia Henley, followed close behind, carrying a leather portfolio filled with the day's correspondence. Detective Sergeant Webb, Camilla acknowledged with a slight nod. Her voice carried the crisp articulation of the British upper class, each word carefully pronounced. I trust everything is in order for my step-grandson's visit. Yes, Your Majesty. All security protocols are in place. Webb's response was measured and professional, though something in Camilla's eyes made him uneasy. There was a sharpness there, a calculation that went beyond mere preparation for an afternoon tea. The Queen Consort moved toward the ornate mahogany sideboard, where delicate bone china cups and saucers had been arranged alongside an elaborate silver tea service. Crystal glasses sparkled in the afternoon light filtering through the tall windows. Everything appeared perfect, exactly as it should be for a royal gathering. Webb's trained eye swept the room once more. The Persian carpet beneath his feet was worth more than his annual salary. Oil paintings of long-dead monarchs stared down from the walls, their eyes seeming to follow his movements. Fresh white roses filled several vases, their sweet scent mixing with the faint aroma of furniture polish and old money. Mrs. Henley busied herself arranging papers on a small writing desk near the window. She was a woman in her early 60s, with graying brown hair pulled back in a practical bun. Her movements were efficient and purposeful, the actions of someone who had spent decades managing the intricate details of royal life. The weather is particularly fine today, Camilla observed, moving toward the tall windows that overlooked the garden. Perfect for young George to explore the grounds after our tea. Her voice carried a note of warmth, but Webb noticed how her fingers worried the large sapphire ring on her right hand. Through the window, Webb could see other members of the security team positioned strategically around the property. The gardens were immaculate, every hedge trimmed to perfection, every flower bed meticulously maintained. A small fountain bubbled peacefully near a grove of ancient oak trees where George would likely want to play. The sound of approaching vehicles drew Webb's attention to the circular driveway. A black Range Rover with tinted windows pulled up to the main entrance, followed closely by a second vehicle containing additional security personnel. Prince George, now 11 years old and growing more confident with each public appearance, would be arriving momentarily. Webb touched his earpiece. Package arriving now, he reported to the command center. All positions confirmed secure. As the vehicles came to a stop, Webb noticed something that made his pulse quicken slightly. A catering van was parked near the service entrance, even though he hadn't been informed of any special refreshments being delivered. His eyes narrowed as he made a mental note to verify the van's presence with the household staff. Prince George emerged from the Range Rover with the easy confidence of youth, his school uniform neat and his face bright with anticipation. At 11, he was tall for his age, with the distinctive fair hair and blue eyes that marked him clearly as a member of the royal family. His protection officer, Detective Inspector Sarah Collins, walked beside him, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. "Grandmother Camilla," George called out as he bounded up the front steps. His voice carried the enthusiasm of a child who genuinely enjoyed these family visits, despite their formal nature. Webb watched from his position near the drawing room entrance as George was greeted by household staff and escorted through the elegant corridors toward their location. The boy's footsteps echoed on the polished marble floors, mixing with the quiet conversations of the staff and the distant sound of traffic from the street beyond the estate's walls. Camilla positioned herself near the tea service, her hands moving gracefully as she arranged the final details of their afternoon gathering. She had selected a particular crystal glass from the collection, setting it slightly apart from the others on a small silver tray. The glass caught the light beautifully, its faceted surface creating tiny rainbows on the white tablecloth beneath. "Mrs. Henley," Camilla called softly to her lady-in-waiting, "would you please ensure the kitchen staff know we'll require fresh strawberries with cream? Young George has such a sweet tooth." "Of course, Your Majesty," Mrs. Henley replied, making a note in her small leather journal. "Shall I also request some of those chocolate biscuits he enjoyed during his last visit?" "An excellent suggestion," Camilla agreed, though Webb noticed her attention seemed focused more on the crystal glass than on the conversation about refreshments. The drawing room door opened, and Detective Inspector Collins entered first, her eyes meeting Webb's in the silent communication of experienced protection officers. Everything appeared normal, but both guards remained alert to any potential concerns. Prince George followed a moment later, his face lighting up as he saw his step-grandmother. "Hello, Grandmother Camilla," he said, executing a small, respectful bow that had clearly been practiced many times. "My dear George," Camilla replied, moving forward to embrace the boy warmly. "How wonderful to see you again. I trust your studies are going well." "Yes, thank you," George replied politely. "We're learning about the Roman Empire in history class. Did you know they built roads that are still being used today?" "How fascinating," Camilla responded, though Webb noticed her glance toward the tea service. "Would you care for some refreshment? I've prepared something special for our visit today." Webb's position near the door gave him a clear view of the entire room. His eyes moved systematically from the windows to the doorways, checking and rechecking potential vulnerabilities. The afternoon sun was beginning to shift, casting different shadows across the elegant furnishings. Mrs. Henley returned from the kitchen, carrying a silver tray laden with delicate sandwiches and pastries. "Cook has prepared cucumber sandwiches and some lovely scones with jam and cream," she announced, setting the tray on the low table between the two chintz-covered armchairs. Prince George's eyes widened with delight. Despite his royal upbringing, he remained very much a normal 11-year-old boy when it came to treats and sweets. "Everything looks delicious, Grandmother Camilla. Thank you for arranging such a lovely tea." Camilla moved toward the sideboard where the drinks had been prepared. Her movements were fluid and graceful, but Webb noticed a slight tremor in her hands as she reached for the crystal glass she had set aside earlier. The glass seemed to catch more light than the others, its surface gleaming almost too brightly. "I've prepared a special elderflower cordial for you," Camilla said, her voice taking on a slightly different tone. "It's made from flowers grown right here in our own gardens. I thought you might enjoy trying something truly unique." Webb's military training had taught him to notice details that others might miss. The way Camilla's voice changed when she mentioned the special drink, the slight hesitation in her movements, the fact that she had specifically chosen one glass from among many identical ones. Prince George settled into one of the comfortable armchairs, his legs swinging slightly as they didn't quite reach the floor. "That sounds wonderful," he said enthusiastically. "I love trying new things." Detective Inspector Collins maintained her position near the window, her eyes moving between the garden view and the interior of the room. She seemed relaxed, but Webb knew she was as alert as he was to any potential concerns. Mrs. Henley began arranging the food on small plates, chatting quietly with Prince George about his school activities and recent family events. Her conversation was warm and genuine, the kind of comfortable interaction that came from years of working with the royal family. Camilla lifted the crystal glass, holding it carefully as she turned toward Prince George. The liquid inside was a pale golden color, catching the afternoon light beautifully. It looked perfectly innocent, exactly like the elderflower cordial she had described. Webb found himself studying Camilla's face more intently than usual. Something about her expression seemed forced, as though she was working harder than normal to appear relaxed and cheerful. Her smile seemed too bright, her movements slightly too deliberate. "Here we are," Camilla said, moving toward Prince George with the glass in her hands. "I do hope you'll enjoy this. It has such a lovely, delicate flavor." Prince George looked up from the sandwich he was preparing, his face bright with anticipation. "Thank you so much, Grandmother Camilla. You're always so thoughtful." As Camilla approached, Webb's instincts suddenly sharpened to a razor's edge. Every fiber of his being seemed to be screaming that something was wrong. The way she held the glass, the tension in her shoulders, the fact that she was offering a drink that hadn't been prepared by the regular kitchen staff. The crystal glass moved closer to Prince George's outstretched hand. Webb could see the boy's fingers beginning to reach for it, trusting and innocent. The afternoon sun caught the liquid inside, making it sparkle like liquid gold. Webb's hand moved toward his radio, his body tensing as every alarm bell in his experienced mind began to ring simultaneously. Something was very, very wrong with this picture-perfect afternoon scene. Webb's world suddenly shifted into the hyper-focused clarity that had kept him alive through 3 combat deployments. Time seemed to slow as his brain processed a dozen details simultaneously. The slight sweet smell that didn't quite match elderflower, the way Camilla's pupils were slightly dilated, the almost imperceptible tremor in her voice when she had mentioned the special cordial. Prince George's small hand reached eagerly for the crystal glass, his face bright with innocent trust. The boy had no reason to suspect anything was wrong. Why would he? This was his step-grandmother, a woman who had shown him nothing but kindness and affection during family gatherings. "Don't drink that." Webb's voice cut through the afternoon air like a blade as his body moved with the lightning reflexes that had been honed through years of training. His hand shot out, striking the crystal glass just as Prince George's fingers were about to close around it. The glass flew from Camilla's grip, spinning through the air in a graceful arc that seemed to last forever. The pale golden liquid caught the sunlight as it sprayed across the Persian carpet, while the crystal itself shattered against the marble fireplace with a sound like breaking ice. Silence filled the drawing room for a heartbeat that stretched into eternity. Prince George's eyes were wide with shock and confusion. Detective Inspector Collins had immediately moved to position herself between the boy and any potential threat, her hand instinctively moving toward her concealed weapon. Mrs. Henley dropped the plate she had been holding, the delicate bone china shattering on the floor with a crash that seemed to echo through the suddenly tense atmosphere. Her face had gone completely white, her eyes darting between Webb and Queen Camilla with obvious terror. "Detective Sergeant Webb." Camilla's voice was sharp with outrage, though Webb noticed something else underneath the anger. Relief, fear. How dare you? What is the meaning of this outrageous behavior? Webb's hand was already on his radio. Control, this is Webb, code red. Immediate lockdown of Clarence House. Request hazmat team and medical emergency response. Possible poisoning attempt on package. Repeat, code red. The response was immediate. Webb, confirm code red. Hazmat and medical en route. Lockdown initiated. All stations maintain positions. Prince George remained frozen in his chair, his young mind struggling to process what had just happened. Detective Webb, his voice was small and uncertain. What's wrong? Why did you break grandmother Camilla's glass? Webb's eyes never left Camilla's face as he spoke to the boy in as calm a voice as he could manage. Your Royal Highness, I need you to stay exactly where you are and not touch anything. Detective Collins is going to take you to a safe room until we can sort this out. I demand an explanation for this inexcusable behavior. Camilla's voice had risen to a near shout, her carefully maintained composure beginning to crack. You've assaulted me and terrorized a child. I'll have your badge for this, Detective Sergeant Webb. But Webb had seen that look before, in the eyes of insurgents when their plans had been discovered. The mixture of rage and desperation that came when someone realized their carefully laid scheme was falling apart. His years of reading people in life-and-death situations told him everything he needed to know. Detective Inspector Collins was already moving, gently but firmly guiding Prince George toward the door. Come along, Your Royal Highness, she said in a soothing voice. We're going to go to another room for a few minutes while Detective Webb sorts everything out. But I don't understand, George protested, looking back over his shoulder at the scene of chaos. Why is everyone so upset? It was just a glass of cordial. Mrs. Henley had backed against the wall, her face still ashen with shock. Her hands were trembling as she stared at the spreading stain on the carpet where the liquid had splashed. Your Majesty, she whispered, what's happening? What was in that glass? Webb kept his position between Camilla and the door, his body language making it clear that she wasn't going anywhere until this situation was resolved. His radio crackled with updates as security teams moved to secure the building and grounds. Webb to control. Need immediate chemical analysis of the liquid sample on the carpet. Also requesting background check on all catering staff and recent deliveries to the residents. Something's not right here. Camilla's mask of royal composure was slipping further with each passing moment. Her breathing had become rapid and shallow, and a fine sheen of perspiration was visible on her forehead despite the comfortable temperature in the room. This is insane, she said, but her voice lacked the conviction of true outrage. You've completely lost your mind, Detective Webb. That was elderflower cordial, nothing more. You've humiliated me in front of my step-grandson over your own paranoid delusions. Webb had interrogated enough suspects to recognize the signs of someone whose story was beginning to unravel. The way her eyes wouldn't quite meet his. The slight defensive posture she had unconsciously adopted. The fact that she was protesting too much and too loudly. Then you won't mind waiting for the lab results, Webb replied calmly. If it's just elderflower cordial, as you say, then we'll have this cleared up in a matter of minutes and I'll personally apologize for my mistake. The sound of rapid footsteps in the corridor announced the arrival of the emergency response team. 2 paramedics entered first, followed by members of the hazmat unit wearing full protective gear. Behind them came Detective Chief Inspector Reynolds, Webb's supervisor, his face grim with concern. What's the situation, Webb? Reynolds asked, his voice crisp and professional. Possible poisoning attempt on Prince George, sir. Suspect offered him a beverage that triggered every alarm bell in my head. Glass is shattered by the fireplace liquid sample on the carpet. Suspect is Queen Camilla. Reynolds' eyebrows rose at this last piece of information, but his expression remained carefully neutral. Understood. Has the prince been harmed? No, sir. I intercepted the glass before he could drink from it. Detective Inspector Collins has moved him to a secure location. One of the hazmat technicians was already carefully collecting samples of the spilled liquid with specialized equipment. Another was photographing the scene from multiple angles, documenting everything for potential criminal proceedings. Mrs. Henley suddenly spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. "The catering van," she said, her eyes wide with realization. "Your Majesty, you said the cordial was made from garden flowers, but I saw you speaking with someone from that van, the one that wasn't scheduled to be here." All eyes turned to Mrs. Henley as she continued, her voice growing stronger as the pieces began to fall into place. "I thought it was odd when you dismissed the regular kitchen staff and insisted on preparing the refreshments yourself. You said it was to be a special surprise for Prince George." Camilla's face had gone very pale, and Webb could see beads of sweat forming on her upper lip. "Patricia, you're confused," she said, but her voice was strained. "I merely wanted to ensure everything was perfect for George's visit." The lead hazmat technician looked up from his preliminary analysis equipment. "Detective Chief Inspector Reynolds, you're going to want to see this. Preliminary field test shows the presence of an unknown alkaloid compound, definitely not elderflower cordial." The words hit the room like a physical blow. Mrs. Henley gasped and sank into the nearest chair. Even Reynolds, with his decades of experience in criminal investigations, looked shocked by the confirmation of Webb's suspicions. Webb felt a cold fury building in his chest. This woman, who had been entrusted with the safety and well-being of a child, had attempted to poison Prince George, the innocent boy who had called her grandmother Camilla with such genuine affection. "Your Majesty," Reynolds said, his voice carefully controlled, "I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to accompany us for questioning in connection with this incident." Camilla's composure finally shattered completely. "You don't understand," she burst out, her voice cracking with desperation. "Do you know what that boy represents, what he threatens? The monarchy needs to be protected from these changes, from the direction William wants to take things." The admission hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. Mrs. Henley stared at her employer in horror, her hand pressed to her mouth. Webb felt his suspicions crystallizing into cold certainty. "Ma'am," Reynolds said quietly, "I'm placing you under arrest on suspicion of attempted murder. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defense if you do not mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence." As the formal caution was read, Webb's radio crackled with an update from Detective Inspector Collins. "Webb, this is Collins. Package is secure and unharmed. He's asking a lot of questions about what happened, but he's safe." Webb touched his earpiece to respond. "Understood, Collins. Situation is under control here. We'll need a full medical evaluation of Package as a precaution, but preliminary indications are that no harm was done." The hazmat technician was still working on his analysis, but his preliminary findings were becoming clearer. Based on the field tests, this appears to be some form of plant-based toxin, possibly ricin or something similar, definitely lethal in the quantities present. Webb watched as handcuffs were placed on Queen Camilla's wrists. The woman who had once been seen as a stabilizing influence on the royal family was now revealed as something far more dangerous. Her carefully constructed image of grandmotherly warmth had hidden a heart capable of murdering an innocent child. "The catering van," Webb said to Reynolds. "We need to track down whoever made contact with her through that vehicle. This level of sophistication suggests she didn't act alone." Reynolds nodded grimly. "Already in progress. We've got the license plate and traffic cameras are being reviewed as we speak." As Camilla was led from the room, she turned back one last time, her eyes wild with a mixture of rage and desperation. "You have no idea what you've prevented," she said, her voice carrying an undertone of genuine fanaticism. That boy will destroy everything the monarchy stands for. I was trying to save the crown." The words sent a chill through everyone present. This wasn't just an attempted murder. It was an act of political extremism carried out by someone at the very heart of the royal family. Mrs. Henley was sobbing quietly now, her world shattered by the revelation of what her employer had been planning. "I can't believe it," she kept repeating. "I just can't believe it. That sweet child. How could she even think of such a thing?" Webb placed a gentle hand on the older woman's shoulder. "Mrs. Henley, I'm going to need you to provide a full statement about everything you observed today. Every detail could be important." She nodded through her tears. "Of course, detective, anything you need, that poor boy." He trusted her completely. As the immediate crisis began to wind down, Webb allowed himself a moment to consider how close they had come to disaster. If he hadn't trusted his instincts, if he had hesitated for even a few seconds longer, Prince George would have consumed a lethal dose of poison. The implications were staggering. The attempted murder of a child who was third in line to the throne would send shockwaves through the British establishment and around the world. The fact that the attempt had been made by Queen Camilla herself would make the scandal even more explosive. The secure briefing room at New Scotland Yard hummed with tension as Detective Chief Inspector Reynolds spread surveillance photograph across the polished conference table. 3 hours had passed since the incident at Clarence House, and the investigation was revealing connections that sent chills through even the most experienced officers present. Webb sat across from Reynolds, his usually calm demeanor showing signs of strain. The weight of what had almost happened was beginning to settle on his shoulders. He had prevented the murder of Prince George, but the conspiracy they were uncovering suggested this was just the tip of a very dangerous iceberg. "The catering van was registered to a shell company," Reynolds explained, pointing to a photograph of the vehicle. "We tracked it to a warehouse in East London, but by the time our teams arrived, it had been completely cleaned out. Professional job. These people knew what they were doing." Detective Inspector Sarah Collins entered the room carrying a thick file folder and a steaming cup of coffee. Her usually pristine appearance showed signs of the stress she had been under since escorting Prince George to safety. "How's the boy?" Webb asked immediately. "Physically fine, though understandably shaken," Collins replied, settling into a chair beside Webb. "He keeps asking why his step-grandmother would want to hurt him. The child psychologists are with him now, trying to help him process what happened." Reynolds pulled up another photograph on the large monitor mounted on the wall. "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez, a chemist who was reported missing from her laboratory in Cambridge 3 weeks ago. We found evidence in her flat suggesting she was forced to create the poison compound." The photograph showed a woman in her 40s with dark hair and intelligent eyes. Webb studied her face, memorizing the features. "Forced how?" "Her daughter attends university in Spain," Collins answered, consulting her notes. "We've been in contact with Spanish authorities. Maria Vasquez disappeared from her dormitory the same day her mother went missing. The timing is too convenient to be coincidental." Webb felt his jaw tighten. Threatening innocent family members was a tactic he had seen used by terrorist organizations and organized crime syndicates. The fact that it was being employed in a plot against the royal family suggested they were dealing with something far more sophisticated than a lone extremist. "What did Dr. Vasquez specialize in?" Webb asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Plant-based toxins," Reynolds replied grimly. She was considered one of the leading experts in the field. Her research focused on compounds that occur naturally in various plant species, but can be concentrated and purified for pharmaceutical purposes. The door to the briefing room opened, and Commander Patricia Walsh, head of the Royalty Protection Unit, entered with several thick files under her arm. Her expression was grave as she took her seat at the head of the table. "I've just come from Buckingham Palace," she announced without preamble. "King Charles has been briefed on the situation. He's requested that we treat this matter with the utmost discretion while ensuring that every possible security measure is implemented." Webb leaned forward. "What about Queen Camilla, ma'am? Has she provided any additional information during her formal interview?" Commander Walsh's expression darkened. "She's requested a solicitor and isn't cooperating with the investigation. However, our search of her private quarters at Clarence House has revealed some interesting items." She opened one of the files and removed several evidence bags. "We found encrypted communication devices hidden in her personal safe, along with a substantial amount of cash in various currencies. There's also this." Walsh held up a photograph showing a handwritten letter in what appeared to be Camilla's distinctive script. It's addressed to someone identified only as the Shepherd. The content suggests she's been part of a larger organization for quite some time. Collins reached for the photograph. "What does the letter say?" "It expresses concern about Prince George's influence on his father's progressive policies," Walsh explained. "Specifically, she mentions his support for environmental initiatives and social reform programs that she believes are weakening the traditional authority of the crown." Webb shook his head in disgust. "She was willing to murder a child over political differences." "It goes deeper than that," Reynolds interjected, pulling up another series of photographs on the monitor. "We've identified financial transactions linking Queen Camilla to several offshore accounts. Someone has been funding her activities to the tune of several million pounds over the past 2 years. The implications were staggering. This wasn't the impulsive act of a disturbed individual, but a carefully planned and well-funded conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of the British establishment." Commander Walsh opened another file. "We've also discovered that Mrs. Patricia Henley, Camilla's lady-in-waiting, may not be the innocent bystander we initially believed her to be." Webb's eyebrows rose in surprise. The older woman had seemed genuinely shocked by the events at Clarence House, her terror appearing completely authentic. "Henley has been in Camilla's employ for 15 years, Walsh continued. "However, financial records show she's been receiving payments far in excess of her official salary. We're currently investigating whether she was complicit in the conspiracy or if she was being coerced in some way." The secure phone on the conference table began ringing with the distinctive tone that indicated a priority call from the command center. Reynolds answered immediately. "Reynolds here." He listened for several moments, his expression becoming increasingly grim. "Understood, we're on our way." He hung up and turned to the others. "There's been a development. Spanish police have located Maria Vasquez, Dr. Vasquez's daughter. She's alive, but she's been held captive for 3 weeks. She's being transported to a secure hospital facility." Collins gathered her files. "What about her mother?" "Still missing," Reynolds replied. "But the daughter may be able to provide information about who was holding her and what they demanded from Dr. Vasquez." As the team prepared to leave the briefing room, Webb's secure mobile phone buzzed with an incoming text message. The number was unknown, but the content made his blood run cold. "You may have stopped today's plan, but Prince George remains a target. The monarchy must be preserved in its traditional form. We are many, and we are patient. The Shepherd." Webb immediately showed the message to Commander Walsh, who paled as she read the words. "They're not finished," she said quietly. "This was just their first attempt." Reynolds was already coordinating with the technology unit to trace the message, but Webb suspected it would lead to another dead end. These people had demonstrated a level of sophistication that suggested they had resources and expertise far beyond what a typical extremist group could access. "We need to assume that Prince George remains in immediate danger," Webb said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Whatever security protocols we have in place, they need to be tripled." Commander Walsh nodded. The royal family has been moved to a secure location. Prince George will remain under maximum protection until we can identify and neutralize this threat. The secure phone rang again, and this time Collins answered. Detective Inspector Collins. She listened intently, making notes on a small pad. Yes, I understand. We'll be there within the hour. She hung up and turned to the others. That was the hospital in Madrid. Maria Vasquez is conscious and asking to speak with British authorities. She says she has information about a group calling itself the Royal Restoration Society. Webb felt a chill run down his spine. The name suggested an organization with a specific ideological agenda, one that viewed the current direction of the royal family as a threat to some imagined traditional order. How extensive is this organization? Reynolds asked, voicing the question that was on everyone's mind. That's what we need to find out, Commander Walsh replied. But based on the resources they've demonstrated so far, we have to assume they have members in positions of significant influence. As they prepared to coordinate with Spanish authorities and arrange for Maria Vasquez's immediate protection, Webb couldn't shake the feeling that they were dealing with something far more dangerous than a simple assassination plot. The attempt on Prince George's life appeared to be part of a larger strategy to reshape the British monarchy according to some extremist vision. There's something else, Collins said, consulting her notes. The preliminary analysis of Queen Camilla's communication devices shows she was in contact with at least 12 different individuals over the past 6 months. The encryption is sophisticated, but our technical team believes they can break it given enough time. Reynolds gathered the evidence files. We need to assume that every member of the royal family is potentially at risk until we understand the full scope of this conspiracy. Webb checked his watch. Evening was approaching, and somewhere in London, Prince George was in a secure location under heavy guard. The boy was safe for now, but the message from the shepherd made it clear that the threat was far from over. What about the public? Webb asked. When this story breaks, it's going to cause massive upheaval. Commander Walsh's expression was grave. For now, we're maintaining complete media blackout. The palace has issued a statement saying that Queen Camilla is unwell and has been hospitalized for observation. That gives us some time to investigate before the truth becomes public. But Webb knew they were living on borrowed time. A conspiracy of this magnitude couldn't remain secret indefinitely, especially with multiple law enforcement agencies involved. When the truth finally emerged, it would shake the British establishment to its very foundations. The attempted poisoning of Prince George was just the beginning. Somewhere in the shadows, the Royal Restoration Society was regrouping, planning their next move against a monarchy they viewed as corrupt and weakened by modern progressive values. Webb's phone buzzed again with another message from the same unknown number. Detective Sergeant Webb, your interference has been noted. Consider this a professional courtesy warning. This time, Webb didn't share the message with his colleagues. Instead, he memorized the number and deleted the text. The conspiracy had just made this personal, and Marcus Webb was not a man who backed down from a challenge. The safe house in the Cotswolds sat beneath a canopy of ancient oak trees, its stone walls and thatched roof giving it the appearance of a quaint countryside cottage. Inside, however, the building had been transformed into a fortress, equipped with the most advanced security technology available to the British intelligence services. Prince George sat in the comfortable living room, trying to focus on his history homework, while 2 armed protection officers maintained watch from discreet positions near the windows. Despite the familiar routine of schoolwork, the 11-year-old boy couldn't shake the memory of Detective Webb's urgent voice shouting, "Don't drink that." 3 days earlier. Detective Inspector Collins sat across from him at the rustic wooden table, helping him with a particularly challenging mathematics problem. She had maintained almost constant supervision since the incident at Clarence House, her presence both reassuring and a constant reminder that his life had been threatened by someone he had trusted completely. "Detective Collins," George asked quietly, looking up from his textbook, "do you think there are other people who want to hurt me?" Collins paused in her review of his arithmetic, choosing her words carefully. "Your Royal Highness, there are many people working very hard to make sure you remain safe. Detective Webb and his team are some of the best in the world at what they do." Meanwhile, 200 miles away in London, Webb was discovering just how deep the conspiracy against the royal family extended. The secure operations center beneath New Scotland Yard buzzed with activity, as intelligence analysts worked around the clock to decode the communications found on Queen Camilla's encrypted devices. Technical Sergeant Davies looked up from his computer terminal, his eyes red with fatigue. "Detective Webb, we've made a breakthrough. The encryption on these devices is military grade, but we've managed to decode about 60% of the message traffic." Webb moved to stand behind Davies, studying the streams of decoded text that filled the multiple monitors. What he read made his blood run cold. "Jesus Christ," he whispered under his breath. The messages revealed a network of individuals in positions of significant authority throughout British society. Members of Parliament, senior civil servants, military officers, and business leaders, all united by their belief that the royal family had strayed too far from what they considered traditional British values. "Look at this one," Davies said, highlighting a particular message thread. "It's from someone with the code name Westminster, dated 2 weeks before the attempt on Prince George's life." Webb read the message aloud. "The boy continues to express support for his father's progressive agenda. His influence over the future direction of the monarchy cannot be allowed to continue. The shepherd has approved the permanent solution." Detective Chief Inspector Reynolds entered the operations center carrying a steaming cup of coffee and a grim expression. "What have we found?" "A full-scale conspiracy to reshape the British government," Webb replied, gesturing toward the wall of monitors. "These people aren't just targeting the royal family. They're planning to eliminate anyone they view as a threat to their vision of how Britain should be governed." Reynolds studied the decoded messages, his expression becoming increasingly troubled. "How many members are we talking about?" "Based on the communication patterns, we estimate at least 50 active participants," Davies answered. "But the structure suggests there could be many more passive supporters who aren't directly involved in planning operations." Webb's secure phone buzzed with an incoming call from Commander Walsh. "Webb here." "Detective, we need you at Thames House immediately. MI5 has information about the shepherd that you need to see." Thames House, the headquarters of Britain's domestic intelligence service, was a fortress of glass and steel in the heart of London. Webb arrived to find Commander Walsh waiting in a sterile briefing room, along with several individuals he didn't recognize but whose bearing clearly identified them as senior intelligence officers. "Detective Webb," Walsh began without preamble, "I'd like you to meet Deputy Director Morrison from MI5. He's going to brief us on what their investigation has uncovered." Morrison was a thin man in his 50s with prematurely gray hair and the sharp, calculating eyes of someone who had spent decades analyzing threats to national security. He gestured toward a large photograph mounted on the briefing room wall. "This is Lord Edmund Worthington, although he prefers to be called by his chosen code name, the Shepherd," Morrison began. "He's a hereditary peer with extensive business interests in defense contracting and private security. More importantly, he's been funding far-right political movements across Europe for the past decade." Webb studied the photograph. Worthington appeared to be in his early 60s, with the refined appearance of British aristocracy. His eyes, however, held a cold intelligence that spoke of dangerous fanaticism. What's his connection to Queen Camilla? Webb asked. They've been in communication for over 2 years, Morrison replied, pulling up additional photographs. Our surveillance suggests that Worthington recruited Camilla during a period when she was feeling marginalized within the royal family. He convinced her that Prince William's progressive policies were a threat to the traditional monarchy. Commander Walsh leaned forward in her chair. What kind of progressive policies? Environmental protection initiatives, social welfare programs, modernization of royal protocols to be more inclusive and accessible to ordinary citizens, Morrison explained. Nothing radical by normal standards, but Worthington's organization views these changes as evidence of weakness and corruption. Webb felt pieces of the puzzle falling into place. So they decided that eliminating Prince George would disrupt the succession and force the royal family back toward traditional conservative positions. Exactly, Morrison confirmed. With Prince George removed, Worthington believed he could influence Prince Louis, who is younger and more malleable. Their long-term goal appears to be establishing a regency that would operate according to their political preferences. The briefing room door opened, and a junior intelligence officer entered carrying a sealed envelope marked with multiple security classifications. Sir, urgent communication from our Spanish colleagues. Morrison opened the envelope and read its contents, his expression growing grave. Maria Vasquez has provided additional information about her captivity. She was held at a facility outside Madrid that appears to be connected to similar operations in France, Germany, and Italy. Webb's mind raced through the implications. You're saying this is an international conspiracy. We're saying this is much bigger than an attempt to poison one member of the royal family, Morrison replied. Worthington's organization appears to be coordinating similar efforts against democratic institutions across Europe. They view the current political landscape as corrupted by liberal ideology and are working to restore what they call traditional authority structures. Commander Walsh stood and moved to the window overlooking the Thames. What's the immediate threat level to Prince George and the rest of the royal family? Extreme, Morrison answered without hesitation. Our intercepts suggest they're already planning alternative approaches. The poisoning attempt was just their preferred method because it could potentially be disguised as natural causes. Webb's phone buzzed with another message from the unknown number that had contacted him previously. This time, the text was longer and more detailed. Detective Webb, your investigation is approaching dangerous territory. We suggest you focus your attention elsewhere if you value the safety of those you protect. Webb showed the message to Morrison, who studied it with obvious concern. They're monitoring our communications, the intelligence officer observed. This level of surveillance capability suggests state-level resources. What are you saying? Walsh asked. I'm saying that Lord Worthington may have backing from foreign intelligence services. Certain nations would benefit significantly from political instability in the United Kingdom. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. What had begun as an investigation into an attempt to poison Prince George was evolving into something that threatened the stability of the British government itself. Webb's phone rang with a call from Detective Inspector Collins at the safe house. Webb here. Detective, we've had a security breach, Collins reported, her voice tight with stress. Someone attempted to gain unauthorized access to the property perimeter about 30 minutes ago. The intruders were repelled, but we found sophisticated surveillance equipment that had been placed in the surrounding forest. Webb felt his stomach drop. Is Prince George secure? Yes, he's safe, but we need to assume our location has been compromised. We're implementing emergency relocation protocols. Morrison was already on another phone, coordinating with his operations center. All available units to the Cotswold safe house. Priority Alpha authorization. Move immediately. As emergency teams mobilized across southern England, Webb realized that the Royal Restoration Society had moved beyond planning and surveillance into active operational phases. Prince George remained their primary target, but the scope of their ambitions suggested that many other lives hung in the balance. The comfortable cottage that had seemed so secure was now revealed as a potential trap. Somewhere in the darkness of the English countryside, highly trained operatives were moving into position for another attempt on the life of an innocent child. Webb checked his weapon and prepared to return to the field. The investigation had revealed the conspiracy's scope, but now came the most dangerous phase, stopping them before they could complete their mission. "Detective," Morrison said as Webb prepared to leave Tim's house, "there's one more thing you should know. Our analysis suggests that Queen Camilla was never intended to survive the aftermath of Prince George's death. She was always meant to be a disposable asset." Webb paused at the door, meaning that even if she had succeeded in poisoning the boy, Worthington's organization planned to eliminate her to ensure she couldn't reveal information about the broader conspiracy. She was a willing participant in her own destruction. The revelation added another layer of horror to an already devastating situation. Camilla had been so consumed by her extremist beliefs that she had willingly participated in a plan that would result in her own death, as well as that of her step-grandson. As Webb raced through the London streets toward the helicopter that would take him to the Cotswolds, he realized they were dealing with fanatics whose commitment to their cause made them extraordinarily dangerous. People who were willing to die for their beliefs were also willing to kill without hesitation or remorse. The helicopter's rotors cut through the night air as Webb and his tactical team approached the Cotswolds safe house. Below them, the countryside was bathed in moonlight, its peaceful appearance masking the deadly game of cat and mouse being played among the ancient hedgerows and stone walls. Webb spoke into his radio headset, coordinating with the ground units that had been deployed around the property perimeter. "Alpha Team, report status." "Multiple heat signatures detected in the woods southeast of the main building," came the reply from Sergeant Thompson, leader of the Tactical Response Unit. "At least 8 individuals moving in coordinated formation toward the house." Webb felt his jaw tighten. 8 operatives represented significant firepower and suggested that the Royal Restoration Society was committed to completing their mission regardless of the cost. "What's the status of Prince George?" Detective Inspector Collins' voice crackled through the radio. "Package is secure in the building's safe room with Detective Williams. Building is locked down and all approaches are covered." The helicopter touched down in a field approximately half a mile from the safe house, far enough away to avoid alerting the attackers to the arrival of reinforcements. Webb and his team moved quickly through the darkness, their night vision equipment revealing the landscape in ghostly green detail. Webb's phone buzzed with another message from the Shepherd. "Detective Webb, you have 15 minutes to withdraw your forces and allow us to complete our mission. If you refuse, we will be forced to use more aggressive methods that may result in additional casualties." Webb showed the message to Sergeant Thompson, who studied it with obvious disgust. "They're giving us an ultimatum." "They're trying to create fear and doubt," Webb replied. "Standard psychological warfare tactics. It means we're getting close to something they want to protect." As they approached the safe house through the surrounding forest, Webb could see muzzle flashes in the distance where his perimeter teams were engaged in firefights with the attackers. The sound of automatic weapons fire echoed across the peaceful countryside, a harsh intrusion into the rural tranquility. "Control, this is Webb. Requesting immediate backup from armed response units. We're dealing with military-level opposition." "Webb, this is Commander Walsh. Additional units are en route, but you're looking at a 20-minute window before they arrive. Can you hold that long?" Webb assessed their tactical situation as bullets whined overhead. 8 attackers against his 4-man team, plus Collins and Detective Williams inside the house with Prince George. The odds weren't terrible, but these weren't ordinary criminals they were facing. "Alpha Team, converge on the main building," Webb ordered. "We need to establish a defensive perimeter around Prince George's location." The next 20 minutes unfolded like a deadly chess game played across the Cotswolds countryside. Webb's team used their superior knowledge of the property layout to outmaneuver the attackers, but the opposition demonstrated professional-level training and equipment that confirmed MI5's assessment of foreign backing. During a brief lull in the fighting, Webb's radio crackled with an urgent transmission from Detective Inspector Collins. "Webb, we've got a problem. Prince George is asking to speak with you directly." Webb ducked behind a stone wall as bullets chipped fragments from its ancient surface. "Put him on." Prince George's young voice came through clearly despite the chaos surrounding the safe house. "Detective Webb, I can hear the shooting. Are people trying to hurt me because of who I am?" The innocent question cut through Webb's professional detachment like a blade. Here was a child asking if people were willing to kill him simply because of his birth, his position in the line of succession to the throne. "Your Royal Highness," Webb replied, choosing his words carefully, "there are some very confused people who have wrong ideas about what's best for Britain, but I promise you that we're going to keep you safe." "Detective Webb," George continued, his voice showing remarkable composure for someone his age, "my father always says that protecting people is about more than just stopping bad things from happening. He says it's about making sure good people can live without fear." Webb felt a surge of emotion as he realized that this child understood concepts of duty and service that the extremists trying to kill him had completely lost sight of. Prince George represented hope for a more inclusive and compassionate monarchy, which was exactly why Worthington's organization viewed him as such a threat. "Your father is a very wise man," Webb replied. "Now I need you to stay safe while we finish dealing with these confused people." The radio transmission was interrupted by the distinctive whine of incoming helicopters. Webb looked up to see multiple aircraft approaching, their searchlights cutting through the darkness like white-hot spears. Sergeant Thompson's voice came through the radio with obvious relief. "Reinforcements have arrived. Looks like we've got armed response units and what appears to be special forces." The arrival of overwhelming force shifted the tactical balance dramatically. The attackers found themselves surrounded and outgunned, their professional discipline beginning to crack under pressure. 3 of them attempted to surrender immediately, while others tried to fade back into the forest. Webb coordinated the sweep of the property, ensuring that every potential hiding place was searched and secured. The operation took another 2 hours, but eventually all 8 attackers were either captured or neutralized. As dawn broke over the Cotswolds, Webb stood in the safe house living room watching Prince George finish his breakfast with the same calm concentration he had shown throughout the ordeal. The boy's resilience was remarkable, though Webb suspected the full psychological impact of recent events wouldn't be felt for some time. "Detective Webb," Prince George said, looking up from his eggs and toast, "will Queen Camilla go to prison?" Webb sat down across from the boy, choosing his words carefully. "The legal system will decide what happens to everyone involved in this situation. What's important is that you're safe and that the people responsible won't be able to hurt anyone else." Commander Walsh entered the room carrying a secure phone and wearing the expression of someone who had been receiving very important briefings. "Detective, I need to speak with you privately." They moved to the kitchen, where Walsh explained the morning's developments. Lord Worthington was arrested at his estate in Yorkshire 3 hours ago. MI5 found documents detailing plans for attacks on multiple targets across Europe. This conspiracy was much larger than we initially realized. Webb felt relief wash over him, though he remained cautious. "What about the other members of the organization?" Coordinated arrests are taking place across the UK and several European countries, Walsh replied. We expect to have the majority of the network in custody by the end of the day. Webb's phone buzzed with one final message from the shepherd. You have won this battle, Detective Webb, but the war for Britain's soul will continue. Others will take up our cause. Webb deleted the message without sharing it with Commander Walsh. Some threats were better dealt with quietly, and he suspected that Worthington's arrest would effectively end this particular conspiracy. 3 weeks later, Webb stood in the ceremony room at Buckingham Palace wearing his dress uniform and trying to maintain his composure as King Charles prepared to present him with the George Cross for exceptional bravery in saving Prince George's life. Prince George himself stood nearby, having specifically requested to be present for the ceremony. The boy had shown remarkable resilience in recovering from the traumatic events, though he continued to receive support from child psychologists. Detective Sergeant Webb, King Charles began, his voice carrying the weight of royal authority. Your instincts and courage prevented a tragedy that would have devastated not only our family but the entire nation. The monarchy owes you a debt that can never adequately be repaid. As the medal was pinned to his uniform, Webb caught Prince George's eye. The boy gave him a small, solemn nod that somehow conveyed more gratitude than any formal ceremony could express. Later, as the formal proceedings concluded, Prince George approached Webb privately. "Detective," he said quietly, "I've been thinking about what happened. Do you think Queen Camilla really believes she was doing the right thing?" Webb considered the question seriously. "Your Royal Highness, I think she convinced herself that she was protecting something she thought was important, but she lost sight of the most important thing of all." "What's that?" "That protecting an institution means protecting the people it serves, not sacrificing them for abstract principles." Prince George nodded thoughtfully. "I think I understand. She forgot that being royal means serving others, not just preserving traditions." Webb smiled at the boy's wisdom. Despite everything he had endured, Prince George had emerged from the ordeal with his compassion and understanding intact. Whatever challenges the monarchy would face in the years to come, it would be guided by someone who truly understood its purpose. Queen Camilla was sentenced to life imprisonment for attempted murder and conspiracy. During her trial, she showed no remorse for her actions, maintaining that she had acted to preserve the monarchy from what she termed progressive corruption. Lord Worthington and most of his network received similar sentences, though several operatives remained at large and were believed to have fled to countries without extradition treaties with the United Kingdom. Dr. Elena Vasquez was reunited with her daughter and relocated to a secure location where she could continue her research under protection. Her expertise in plant-based compounds would prove valuable in developing countermeasures against similar assassination attempts. Webb returned to his regular duties with the Royalty Protection Unit, though he was assigned as Prince George's primary protection officer. The relationship between the detective and the young prince had evolved into something approaching friendship, built on mutual respect and shared experience. The conspiracy had been defeated, but its existence had revealed vulnerabilities in the security systems protecting Britain's democratic institutions. Reforms were implemented to prevent similar infiltration by extremist organizations, and international cooperation on monitoring far-right networks was significantly enhanced. Prince George continued his education with a new understanding of the responsibilities that came with his position in the line of succession. The attempt on his life had taught him that leadership sometimes required courage in the face of opposition from those who claimed to support the same institutions he was destined to serve. Webb often reflected on how close they had come to losing not just a young life, but the future direction of the British monarchy. His split-second decision to trust his instincts and slap that crystal glass from Prince George's hand had prevented a tragedy that would have echoed through history. The phrase, "don't drink that," had become a private joke between Webb and Prince George, a reminder that sometimes the most important moments in life came down to trusting your instincts and having the courage to act, even when the consequences might be professionally devastating. In the end, Webb's willingness to risk everything to protect an innocent child had not only saved a life, but preserved the possibility of a more compassionate and inclusive monarchy for future generations. It was, he reflected, exactly the kind of service that his oath as a protection officer was meant to represent.